Okay, so this week's videos are going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be blending together examples from the Guild series in order to illustrate things that you read about in Chapter 5 from digital storytelling, old tools slash new tools, and then also the mise-en-scène terms that you studied for this week. I wanted to start out by playing here in the background the introduction to the Guild, where that shows the Guild's avatars. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start with this is because it introduces us to the avatars of each of the players in the Guild, which is a local group that gathers over the course of the series. But they also play online, and this story was based on Felicia Day, the writer and creator of the series, real life experiences playing World of Warcraft for many, many hours a day. And so for the series itself, though, of course, they couldn't use the name or any of the terminology that was associated with the game. So it becomes sort of this fictionalized version of World of Warcraft. But here we have the avatars of each of the... So here in the introduction, we have the avatars for the characters. And we can see there's Vork and there's Tink. And here is Zabu, Clara, and, Zabu Blades was the one earlier. And then the Guild comes down. Oops, I wanted to pause that a little bit earlier. I have to move the screen. One of the reasons why I wanted to show this is because you'll see over the course of the series, as the Guild raises in popularity and they start getting more financial contributions, that the artwork associated with the series becomes much better. Here you can see that the final image, where we see all of the avatars lined up, is quite blurry and pixelated. And in part we can attribute this to the low financial resources that they had, and that they were kind of, trying to make do with what they could get for free or easily from people on loan. And so this intro series does change quite a lot over the next 6 seasons. And the first series was quite popular, and we can see that in the annotations, which is why I wanted you to watch this series with the annotations, so that we could be thinking about the different kinds of issues that come up with when you're producing stories for the internet. Again, as opposed to where we started with looking at a text where Jane Austen, the only financial limitation that she had was to have time to work on her text, to have enough money to have the time, and then to buy paper and ink and a quill pen. When you move from a print format to a visual format, of course, financial concerns become a lot more important, because they become tantamount. Because one thing that not having a large budget does is that it makes your viewers or your potential audience members not take you as seriously, or not take your product as seriously as you might wish. And what I have found over the years teaching this particular web series is that the first season tends to generate not very much excitement amongst the students. But then as the series proceeds and becomes of higher quality, they get more money, they get more funding, they are able to implement a lot more technical know-how into the series, and CGI, for example, and more advanced editing and cinematography and mise-en-scène, that the reception of the product becomes more favorable, because it is such a visual medium that you need to have those kind of resources at your beck and disposal in order to make the story seem palatable to the audience. So I do encourage you, if you did not enjoy the first season all that much, to hang in there, because the quality jumps exponentially by the second season, and then even again by the third season, and then the fourth season takes off in a totally new direction. And we'll talk about that as we progress. So one of the things about this series, though, is that it does borrow from old tools and old kinds of storytelling that we are very familiar with. As is pointed out in Chapter 5 of your textbook, we have the just the basic sort of ideas where we have tension. We need to have tension within this series, and so that we can maintain an interest in it. And we see that from the beginning when Zabu shows up. Oops. I'm going to kind of be jumping around here a little bit. Shows up at Codex's house. And I do want to call attention as well to Codex's avatar's name, because Codex, as we've talked about in the past, is a word that is popular in the new media community to refer to books. And I think it's, it's kind of ironic, and that to point to the fact that her online gaming name is Codex, which refers to a printed text. But nevertheless, she is a MMORG player. So the tension that we have here in the beginning is, of course, that Zabu shows up at Codex's house in real life and wants to, live with her and has been stalking her virtually. And of course, that is a very freaky and scary thing that would happen. And a lot of people commented on the original series that they didn't like the fact that Zabu was a stalker. But nevertheless, that adds tension to the story and gives us a conflict that needs to be resolved. As we go on, we see that there are sort of three movements to this tension, how we're going to resolve it. First, Zabu shows up. That creates a conflict where Codex is moved to get the guild to come together in real life so that they can deal with this issue and try to get him out of her house. And then, of course, Zabu's mother shows up. And then there's the whole kerfluffle over the guild bank, which Bork has given to Blades, and Blades is trying to blackmail the rest of the team with. So I find this really interesting in how, of course, this particular series that we're watching isn't set up like a game, but nevertheless the narrative is driven by these characters' actions that develop out of a game world environment. And so those of you who aren't gamers, you're going to be getting quite the education in game lingo and game talk, and then watching how the game is affecting these characters' lives. I really like this annotated version because it shows how there is interactivity within this web series, even though a lot of it is, traditional old-fashioned advertising and trying to raise money. So we can see how they embed links into the navigation of their interface here, where we're watching the video, and you can click on there and buy some products to go along with your entertainment experience. So here, the interface that is set up, and basically what an interface means is how you what you're initially given from a website on how to, or a product, in order to go in and navigate throughout the system. And you can see how in this particular interface up here, we can see that we can subscribe by clicking up here. And then down here, we have our playback bar that we can rewind and fast forward on. We also have our volume button, fast forward, play button. Do you want closed captioning? What are your settings? Do you want to watch it in full screen or not? And then also the occasional opportunities to click through and see, cut out sections or segments of the of the video. So this would be number 2 on the list of 10 new tools. And this is something where we have systems within this web series of determining events and assigning variables. So you can just watch the video. They've compiled it into one long video where you can see the entire season, but then you can also take side routes and participate in the story in different ways, even if it's just buying a t-shirt. So I also like how the annotations tell us things that have been, perhaps happening behind the scenes that you can't actually see visually, and that helps to keep you as well involved in understanding that other things were going on in the filming that we may not be aware of when we were watching the finished product. So this gnome down here is mooning us, but it's off camera, so we can't see it. Now, in this kind of interactive narrative, in this particular version with the Guild, our interactivity is kind of led by these annotations. They tells us what we know, gives us back behind the scenes information, also tells us exactly when we can click the screen and do additional activities. And so we're definitely assigned a role within this game as an active viewer. We can't actually play the games that they're playing. We're watching them play. They're, MMORG, but we actually are participating in it. At certain times, we're actually told, would you like to make comments? And you can do so below. And so we're given this specific role as a viewing audience that can nevertheless interact with the narrative in certain prescribed ways. Now, for number 4, working with new types of characters and artificial intelligence, we'll see that more in the series as we progress when the characters will immerse themselves into the game. And again, we have to wait until they get CGI capabilities with additional funding, and we'll meet some non-player characters that our real-life characters are interacting with in the virtual world. So, but number 5, new ways of connecting with story elements. We do have the hypertext version of the transmedia storytelling, again, with being encouraged to click on links and to do additional things within the narrative. Now, one thing I did want to draw your attention to here is that we have the 3rd episode, I believe, which was the first one that they let us know was not funded by the producers but by the fans. And this is something I think is really interesting about storytelling, digital storytelling in the new world, is that we are told over and over again that with the internet we can produce and we can become producers, we can become actors, directors, writers, whatever we want. We can put them out for free, and that's true. But also, of course, all of us want to be paid for our work, and in order to create a work of high quality, we're going to need funding. There's only so much that you can, achieve when you have very low quality equipment in order to back you up. And so we'll see as the series progresses how the extra funding helps them to appear more professional. And the producers and directors and writers do not hide that from us at all, especially within the annotations. So they help to give us some of that background information. Here we go. For example, here, Felicia and Ken put up a PayPal button on the website after a bad Hollywood funding meeting. So traditionally, directors and story writers would go to these large already set up corporations who would then offer them money to produce something. And what happens with the internet is that you do get to turn to what's known as crowdfunding, right? Where you can say, okay, we tried to get, say, $20 million out of a particular corporation. They wouldn't give it to us, but if we have 20 million viewers and each of them can give us $1, then we can still raise the funding. And so this has become a really great way to do like grassroots fundraising and to empower people to choose the kind of entertainment they want, as opposed to accepting the kind of entertainment that corporations want to feed to us. And so there is a give and take here. And this web series was so popular that they were able to raise a lot of money and to keep producing a quality product. Now, one of the things that we do get to see are these behind-the-scenes takes, and again, you get to have an inside look at what low-quality cinematography and editing looks like. This particular audition tape for Tinkerbella is shot in a strange angle. It's framed very awkwardly. The lighting is bad. The costume isn't good. There's no editing. It's just one long continuous take. and we get to have access to that, which again is pretty darn cool. We can access it when we want. All right, so this video is ending, and I will pick up again